I mean, you know.
I mean, I think I was certainly one of the very few men who I knew, maybe the only one, who had any sympathy for the tempestuous Mrs. Bobbitt. Because if you recall the first statement that she made, basically a poor woman, fairly uneducated, an immigrant to this country, not very powerful, not very well plugged in, not very well connected, very unhappy and lonely. First statement she makes to the police about the organ which she'd separated from Mr. Bobbitt was that while it was attached to him, it had been pretty much no good to her. That, as she put it, he always finishes first and never cares about me.
Never waits.
In other words, it wasn't that she felt threatened or menaced by this said organ, or cudgeled or brutalized by it, but sort of let down by it, disappointed by it. I thought more men should have paid more attention to that.
But you're not exonerating her.
The way that, no, I mean, obviously she was, in every sense, a pathetic and probably quite a nasty woman, it seems to me, but as much to be pitied as anything else. The only way that you can't get any sense out of this discussion is if you assume that, that she was wrong to say that. In other words, that women are asexual, which is the assumption made, it seems to me, in a lot of the date rape literature and a lot of the Catherine McKinnon and Andrea Dworkin type commentary, that women are basically not sexed, and that...
They don't say that.
No, this is where the reason why a lot of men are being sort of driven to the right, so to speak, the sexual right, is because they sort of know that's not true.
Is the sexual right... I mean, where is the sexual right? I mean, is it...
Men hating women and thinking that they all plan to cut their things off.
Or the attacks on feminism and all of that, is that where men are driven to the right?
And the fear and the boring, endless sort of Rush Limbaugh type joking about it that's catching on, is that men sort of know that that's not true and that it's hypocritical. And they know that women would, or they ought to know, I would like to argue anyway, that women would be the losers if the chaperone came back on campus and for teenagers.
That's something that
is a sexual assault epidemic, and how do we acknowledge that, fight it, and claim that women are sexual agents, sexually curious, can be sexually objectifying, that we are not saints, nor should we have to be?
Look, just before we leave this Antioch theme, because I was as surprised as you were too, to read on the front of the New York Times the words, "May I put my finger in?" I never expected to read that on the front of the good old Grey Times. And I noticed that it followed instantly. It was stage 4 after "May I remove your bustier?" No doubt they call it in Antioch. I don't know what it is. Anyhow, I thought to myself, there are at least 3 things wrong with this. One is, from the male point of view, it's insulting because you have to do all the work on this assumption. From the female point of view, I think it's insulting because it means the men also have to do all the talking. And third, and let's see if we can say this on the air or not, it seemed to me that it had, and not accidentally, it had abolished the clitoris.
Right.
There was no.
Say it again.
It was. Let me put it like this then: the clitoris had been elided in this. Now I can't believe that that's an accident, because if you mention that, you mention that women are, in some sense, keenly motivated for sex themselves, and that's the thing I think Antioch is as reluctant to face as the perhaps whoever is the sub-editor.
Let me just say a couple of things. Go ahead, Katie.
Against a straw man that is not me. I mean, I'm not saying that.
Can I say a word in defense of Katie Roifer? Yes, because it seems to me, well, I'm not trying to be gallant, believe me.
Gallantry becomes you, Christopher.
I'm getting on, you see, a bit. And indeed, my decade was, as must be only too painfully obvious, the 60s, when feminism began, and I remember being present at some of this.
It didn't begin in the 60s. It began about 1790.
I perfectly well. I know even Mary Wollstonecraft.
Oh, good.
Yes, I know that. But for people around this table, I think it could be said that's when it began.
Yeah.
So you'll allow my
please. Your point is
yes. What I remember was violently resisting, all of us, different ways, the idea that the university could be in loco parentis, as it wanted to call it. So the university would play the role of your parents. And if you had a beef against another student of any kind, it was considered kind of babyish to want to go to the dean the entire time and complain about your feelings. But now it seems to me that not just on sexual matters, but on quite a lot of other things lumped under the heading of correctitude, everyone in the university seems to want to have more authority over themselves, to have more complaints procedures, to have more therapy and more litigation. And I would say, for heaven's sake, there's enough of all that in the wider society as it is. And you can't justify this by reference to microorganisms, I'm sorry to say. It's not viruses that are making people behave this way. It's a regression to infantilism that's going on. And I think it's a real shame. Crying shame. So morally, I thought she made that point excellently in her book. No, I think you can be much more affirmative than that, Tad, if I may say so. I mean, I don't think I know any guy worthy of the name, so to speak, who hasn't at one time or another in his life said to another guy, you heard the lady, leave her alone. Shut up. Move on, you know. I mean, that's part of what it is to be a man, is to be able to do that. And therefore, I think, and by the way, can I mention a piece I've written, since everyone else is plugging their stuff?
Go ahead.
I've got a piece coming up soon about the work of a feminist author who isn't here, but who I admire very much, called Elizabeth Fox Genovese.
Yes.
And she's reviewed you, in fact, hasn't she? I think so. Now, she says one of the reasons why so many women are not describing themselves as feminists these days is because it's not relevant to them, because the struggle for existence for women at the moment is quite grim, and it's usually centered on the very important fact of bringing up children. And not only can you not get hold of a kid without a man, but you have a very hard time bringing one up without a guy. And many of these women, I think, of the working class, if I can use another phrase that's hardly ever heard on TV, like clitoris and penis and so on.
Working class?
Working class. They often hear that. They think of feminism as something that maybe is bad-mouthing their brothers and their husbands and their fathers and other hard-working guys who they know and quite like.
This is another complaint also.
Men sitting around in the woods barking at the moon and beating their chests in sweat lodges.
But
that's not
understood
why.
But just wait a few seconds. That's the next thing that's going to happen.
What?
Well, we've been waiting for a men's movement for a long time.
The infantilizing I was talking about is going to happen. Men will say, well, if women can go to the dean if they feel they've been felt up or whatever, I'm going to start complaining too. Everyone's going to start being a victim.
Have the Menendez
men will
brothers.
want a share in the victimhood business. It will be unstoppable and completely negative.
I
very boring.
Does the victim business, is that what, I mean, this is about...
sense of both the angelic and the demonic in human nature and female nature as well.
I don't find it as easy to speak as if I was a category as you do, and I can't say we
Which category are you in?
But I'm obviously in the category of straight white male person.
Right.
It's when people start talking about power, about the power that this gives me, that I begin to wonder if slightly too much of a compliment isn't being paid. Rather as when some women talk about the penis as a sort of mighty engine or cruise missile or something, you think, well, I wonder where they get this idea. But I do think there is, and the reason why I will speak for what I think many male, straight, white types do fear, is that there must be some relationship between this empowerment talk that they keep hearing and potency. There's got to be some hidden subliminal connection, some latent connection. There's got to be, they think. So they back off a bit.
So as women began to say, someone said that this whole thing has two parts. One, women are saying, I'm going to enjoy sex, and I'm going to enjoy sex on my own terms, and I'm going to make demands, and you're saying when that takes place, therefore, it affects, it goes to the heart of male performance and male potency and those kinds of issues.
The temptation is then going to be that of self-pity. You'll say, well, actually, I'm not all that powerful, and sometimes I don't feel all that potent.
Right.
And the male organ, for heaven's sake, is actually rather capricious, vulnerable,
But this is why it's especially...
I'm losing my thread here.
Wait, stop. Why are you both are sort of relishing and reveling in the fact that he's talking about male performance and male potency?
Male vulnerability.
And male vulnerability.
Women also want this organ to be in good shape, is what I'm saying. Because without testosterone, I'm sorry to say, none of us could be here.
Oh, well, that's very Pogli-esque. I mean, I don't think that, male testosterone has...
I don't find that any great insult, actually. But I mean, if she... I do think you don't have to be Camille Paglia or indeed me to say it's a truism. I'm making an animal rights point, basically. I mean, we are an animal species. Right. We are programmed to reproduce. Men particularly are programmed to inseminate. They can't, so to speak, help it. That's just as well, really, because without testosterone and erections and other things of the sort, none of us would be here. Now, I think that, rather as you pulled me up by saying there was feminism before the 60s, I'm quite ready to acknowledge, I think that point was understood before Camille Paglia.
Well, but
Wouldn't you agree to that?
An assault on their maleness and manhood. And that's where we need to go. And if that's true, then we ought not have this conflict that you talk about, this rage that's setting in.
There will be conflict, but it need not be a war. In other words, nature is dialectical, right? And if you marry a man and a woman, you don't get a synthesis of male and femaleness. You get either a boy or a girl.
Right.
I think you were going to say something about power and balance.
Well, I'll come right back to it. Let me
go first. Sorry if I...
No, but finish your point. I'll come right back to Rebecca and then...
I'm happy to yield, but I was merely going to say that what I said about Elizabeth Fox Genovese's point about all the men that there have to be in a woman's life, apart from sexually, and the number of masculine roles that men can play for women, holds true conversely. I mean, men have platonic girlfriends who they like, they have mothers, they have sisters, daughters even, things like that. Their relationship with women is always going to be extremely complicated, but you can't reduce it to a conflict of interest. See, I think objectification is an absolutely stupid word, and I'm fed up with it. I think it's being overused like empowerment. When I look at that picture, if you want to hold it up again, I don't regard Miss Crawford. What I see there is not just a sexual object, though undoubtedly she is an object. Everyone else is an object to everyone else.
Yeah.
But I also see a subject. I mean, she's a great subject. Sex is a great subject.
Right.
Women are, in male conversation, a tremendous subject. I'm told the same is true the other way around.
And well, she
it's
did make a point about
subjectification. In other words, if people talk a bit less about themselves and how the personal is political, and the whole area of contestation is all to do with their own psyche and their own needs and dreads and feelings, and a bit more about society and others, I think we might get on a lot better.
Such a hard conflict to do for most of us.
It depends on how much trust. My God, I sound old-fashioned. I mean, and crusty too, but just like there used to be an argument, among feminists, but can it be true that the story of O was written by a woman? You must have all had this argument at some point and read it. And so I think it's very clear it was written by a woman. But I think it was written by a woman with men in mind. Some women will admit, we might even ask you, since we're letting it all hang out, to having rape fantasies that aren't completely pleasureless. But that's up to them. It doesn't mean that...
Getting into murky waters
I know we are. It doesn't mean, but they're entitled to do that. It may be pleasurable sometimes to imagine being ravished.
Well, no, but it's also true that
doesn't mean that anyone has the right to jump out while you're trying to get the groceries home and manhandle you.
But do know that part of the reason women have those fantasies is that Hollywood puts a glamorized sexy rape in 1 movie out of 8, so little girls grow up not seeing images of female desire.
I've met women who don't much go to the movies.
Yeah, you think it's just natural?
I don't know, but I have been told by women who trust me, in other words.
Yeah.
Okay, that they do have such.
Yeah, but these are not organic.
And I think it would be insulting for me to say, "Oh, I see, you have those fantasies. You've been watching too many movies." That would be an incredible thing.
But
that would be a very poor reward for a
constructed.
woman reveling her intimate thoughts to you, wouldn't it?
I think what's more interesting is
accuse her of being a cretin.
I just think it's obvious.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of either Clinton, but since we're on the subject, it's
not
good
a fan
of either Clinton.
Either Clinton, Eastwood, or Clinton.
Hillary or Bill.
Okay.
But there is an attractive story about how they met, which is told by her. Well, they're in the library, law library, I believe, and she gets up and walks over to this guy, Bill, as it happens, and says, "If you're going to keep looking at me like that, it's time you knew my name."
Go, Hillary.
Go, girl.
No, that is a story about her that I've heard that I like.
Right, I do too.
Now,
Sexy.
when you think of what you know is
should be that way.
What is now going on in the libraries and campuses of this country, where men and women are sort of sitting on opposite sides of the thing, looking at each other in sort of juvenile fear. I'm glad to hear it. There's a very important counterpoint to that, which offends a lot of civil libertarians of all genders, which is not the redefinition of rape, but the redefinition of evidence, and the idea also that you can be accused by someone whose name you don't know.
Right, that's problematic. I think that
the anonymity of the one, in other words, corresponds to the proclamation of the other. You can be accused by an anonymous person.
I think we're
against
dealing
the law.
with
It's against the Constitution,
we're not really